Okay. So I'm back on again. I don't know, but I just started a second stream again, period. Can you tell people to go back? Question mark. Okay, so I don't know if anybody will find this one. This is a second stream. Oh, there we go. Unfortunately, we're back on, and we lost everybody. I don't know what's going on in the church today. I don't know what's going on. I just don't, we had all these really good questions, and unfortunately, suddenly, I don't know, maybe the router went down. I don't know, but it said that I had an unstable connection, and I lost Tina again, and I see you guys coming back on now, but we lost all those really good questions that we had in the queue, so that sucks. I remember the two-part question about does the Holy Light only come to the Orthodox, and do we own it, which of course we don't, what was the second part of the question? I don't even remember now, to tell you the truth. I think the second part from Alicia was, why does it happen in secret? Okay, so just a quick recap of that question. If anybody else can retype their questions, that would be good. After that, because I didn't see the other questions, Tina was taking care of them, and she's gone right now, unfortunately. We've had a problem with this podcast, with this video live today. I don't know why. The Holy Light comes only to the Orthodox Patriarch. We don't know why. Doesn't mean that we're better than everybody else or anything like that. We don't engage in those kind of conversations. And as I said, in the late 1800s, there was an attempt to lock out our Patriarch from the Holy Sepulchre by the Armenian non-canonical Patriarchate, and the Armenian Patriarch went in, the Catholicos as it's called, and he went in and prayed and prayed and prayed, and nothing happened. He finally gave up. He came out, and when he came out into the courtyard, the Holy Light flashed out of the tomb almost like lightning, broke through the column on the side of the door, of the front door of the Holy Sepulchre, and came to the hands of the Patriarch outside. That crack still exists today. If you go to Jerusalem, even if you Google it, you can see the crack in the column that the Holy Light made on that day. And so that was the last time somebody tried to lock out the Patriarch from the Holy Sepulchre. It's not a secret. It's something that is done out of reverence. So when the Patriarch goes into the Kuvuklion, that kind of square edicule, the structure that is built over the tomb of Christ, people can see, like, there's holes in the structure on the side, like almost kind of like big holes where you can like see into the room. Like you can see him praying there. It's not like the secret, like, you can't see what he's doing. Like he just goes in, he crawls in, because in the place where the actual tomb is, you have to bend over to get in because you can't stand up. And he kneels there with the 33 little candles in one hand and 33 little candles in the other, and he just prays, and the light just comes. And you can see in the video, like this year, although the Holy Sepulchre was pretty much empty, there was only like 10 or 15 people in there because of the COVID quarantine. You can see people like waiting in the sides, like in the holes, looking in the windows, waiting. And then when the light comes, he gives it out to people. Even before he comes at the front door, he gives it through the holes, to the people, and they're waiting with candles to get it. So people are watching. It's not like it's not like a secret, or it's not like it's like this big like hoax kind of thing, right? And so it's not, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre and the Holy Light that happens there, but we keep doing what we're doing, and I don't know if that's enough for people or if it isn't, but it has to be enough, and if it's not, that's okay. It's okay. But just to clarify, the Holy Light that comes out of the tomb on Holy Saturday, it doesn't happen on Holy Saturday midnight. Okay? For some reason, it happens on Holy Saturday in the morning. We don't know why. That's just when the miracle is happening, right? So a lot of people think that it's happening at midnight and then it's being flown over to Greece and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, how is it possible to fly the light over and to have it in Greece for the evening service? Well, it's because the service happens in the morning and they do the service of the Holy Light. For some reason, that's when the miracle started happening, and that's when we do it. and then and the light, that's not the light that comes here. Like we don't have the holy light from Jerusalem in our churches. We just have our little kadilaki. It's in the altar here, and it's not the holy light from Jerusalem. But for us, it just every church has a kadili on the altar, and sometimes it even blows out sometimes because sometimes the oil runs out or something like that. It's not magic, right? The light is the representation of the Holy Spirit there. It's not a magical thing, right? So I know some people, they think, they have to go to the church and get the light, and that light is from Jerusalem. They got to keep it lit. Well, we try to keep it lit from a spiritual point of view, because we want to kind of keep that fire and that light of the resurrection alive in us as long as possible. But it's not because it's magical or because it came from Jerusalem. Some years people have organized the light to come from Jerusalem, but it's taken a couple of weeks to actually get to us. So, don't, what's the word? Don't get really bent out of shape about, where did the light come from and things like that. So, okay. So I see we got 12 people back. Unfortunately, we were up to 27, 30 people, but I don't see any questions being typed out again. I guess people got frustrated, which I don't blame them, since we got cut off twice today. I don't have any other questions that have come in, as far as I know. I'll check again, but it's a lot harder when Tina, my producer, is not here, because it's it's hard to read and answer the questions at the same time. Oh, here comes a question, Joshua. Is the Holy Fire coming to North America again? I don't know. It doesn't come every year. People have to kind of organize it. And so sometimes they'll bring it as a blessing. I know a couple of years ago they did, and they had started a Facebook group. And if you wanted it, you could request in the Facebook group, and people would come by. So we had somebody bring it by our church. It was kind of not word of mouth, but person to person. It came in, and it took a couple of weeks after the Pascha to come. So it wasn't right away. And I haven't heard anything about this year, if anybody's organizing it. So, yeah. Oh, here, more questions. Here we go. I think that one, proceeding in living. So there's one question that says, how do we proceed in living the resurrection during Bright Week and after Pascha? Well, we're supposed to be living the resurrection all the time, and especially on Sundays, because Sunday is the day of resurrection. Sunday is it is the the what's it called? It is the shutting down here. Sunday is always the day of the resurrection, and so we're supposed to be celebrating Pascha every Sunday, and this is why there's no fasting on Sundays, and we're not supposed to be kneeling on Sundays and things like that. So, one of the things is that we should remember to say Christos Anesti. A lot of times we say it for 1 or 2 days, and then we forget about it. And we're supposed to be saying it for 40 days until the ascension. Christos Anesti, Alithos Anesti. Christ is risen. Truly he is risen, right? Christos Voskrese, right? Voisnu Voskrese, that's Russian, Slavonic. But you can say it in many different languages. But we should be saying that because it's part of preaching the gospel to people, right? That we should say that. And, sometimes I say it even to my non-Orthodox friends, because I think it's important for them to know that we are in a Paschal season and we're celebrating it, So Christos Anesti, I think, is a really important tradition that we need to keep. And I don't see it. I talk to my friends even now, 3-4 days after the resurrection, and nobody tells me Christos Anesti even on the phone. I'm like, guys, remember Christos Anesti, right? Nobody says it anymore. So that's one thing I think we can do to keep it alive. There's a question here from Alicia. Also, I'm sure this question is very common, but could you go into more detail as to why Catholic and Orthodox people celebrate Easter on different days? It's just a matter of calculation. So I don't know if you remember, or if you were on, I think it was 3 or 4 Q&As back now. Somebody had asked about the old calendar, the new calendar, the Julian calendar versus the Gregorian calendar, and how, in 1922, some of the Orthodox churches switched to the Gregorian, to the newer calendar, because it's more scientifically accurate and, accounts for the leap year and things like that. However, when it came to Pascha, all the Orthodox stayed on the old way of calculating, which is the Julian way. So we don't really follow the new calendar per se. Like we don't follow the complete Gregorian calendar. We follow kind of like a hybrid calendar where the fixed feast days that don't change, which doesn't have anything to do with Pascha because Pascha moves, right? Depending on when the spring comes. The fixed feast days follow the Gregorian, but the Paschal Lenten season, which moves, that follows the old Julian. So that all the Orthodox, they celebrate Pascha on the same day, whether they're on the new or the old calendar, but the fixed feasts differ depending on the Gregorian or the Julian, right? So it's just a different way of calculating. It's not like one is, holier or better or whatever. It's just a different way of the way we calculate when the coming of the vernal equinox is, the spring solstice, when the planets line up and the spring comes, and we want to celebrate Pascha when the spring comes because spring means resurrection. Everything is coming back to life from death, from the winter, right? So this is the way we calculate it, right? So I'm sure there are more. There's more in-depth answer there, but I'm not more well versed on this topic to be able to go into it more. So that's the best answer that I can give you right now. There's another question here. Same thing. Which calendar was present during Jesus' time? If nothing had changed and the original date of the resurrection was kept, which day and month do you think Jesus would have actually been resurrected? Yeah, so it's not, your question, so you're kind of asking the wrong question. So it's not, the liturgical calendar of the year, of the church year, is not based on historically when things happened. That's irrelevant to the ancient world, right? They only care about celebrating the feast, right? So they want to carve out a day in the year to celebrate and commemorate that feast. They didn't really care if it was actually historically the same day that the actual event happened, right? So for example, we celebrate Christmas on December 25th because it's 9 months from March 25th, which is the Annunciation of the Virgin Mary, the conception of Christ, right? 9 months later is the birth, right? Christ probably did not get actually born in the middle of the winter. We don't know exactly, but probably he didn't. But that's irrelevant for us because it's not about, like, the way we think of it today is in our kind of like scientifically minded way. We think about like a video camera, like an eyewitness account, like, what day did actually happen? In the ancient world, people didn't care what day something actually happened. They just cared about celebrating the day, right? So they had a cycle of services throughout the year that kind of made sense from a liturgical point of view, from a spiritual point of view, of having kind of a flow of services. Not necessarily that they had to be on the exact day that something happened, but rather that they kind of they followed a flow of prayer, right? And so it's kind of hard for us to conceive of that today, but they didn't really care about that. And the liturgical cycle of the year, didn't really it kind of changed a lot over time. The calendar was augmented many, many times. Even the old Julian calendar, make space for saints. New saints came in. You had to find space and to commemorate them. Feasts got shifted around. Feasts were created. Like we know, believe it or not, that Christmas did not become a prominent feast on its own until about the 4th century. So, it used to be that Pascha was the main feast, and then you had the feast of Theophany or Epiphany, like the revelation of Christ, and it used to be like the celebration of both the baptism of Jesus in the Jordan and his birth as one big feast, because both of them have a theme of Christ being revealed to the world. And only later did the two feasts of Epiphany and Christmas, they were separated in 2 separate feasts, 12 days apart, December 25th and January 6th, right? The 12 days of Christmas. That happens later, right? So there's lots of different changes that happen over time. And, excuse me, they are, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We have to kind of like get away from this idea that we have to be stuck to the days that we think something actually happened. That's irrelevant for people in the ancient world. They just care about the spiritual meaning of that. We are celebrating the birth of Christ today. Let's look at the theology of it. Let's look at what it means for us, for our lives. That's what's important, not the historicity of it. And the next question is, sometimes I've heard it said that at the tomb it was an angel, and sometimes I heard that it was Christ himself that said the good news to the women. Can you explain this? Oh, yeah. So this is a good question. There are 4 Gospels in the New Testament, which means there are 4 versions of the resurrection story, and they all differ. And that's good. So some people, they get scandalized by this. They say, oh, and especially people who are not in the church, they say, oh, look, the stories differ. In some of them, there are 2 women. Some of them, there's 1 woman. Some of them, there's, Christ reveals himself directly. In some of them, there's an angel that comes down and sits on the stone. And another one, they look inside and they see an angel. And, sometimes it's Mary Magdalene on her own. And sometimes there's other women there and things like that. So there are differing accounts of who was there and what they actually saw, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because the argument is by people who are on the outside of the church, who are non-believers. They say, well, because there's differing opinions on what actually happened at the resurrection, in the sense that who was there and exactly what was the sequence of events, the story is not credible. That's the accusation. Ironically, the differences in the story are all, first of all, they're all cosmetic, in the sense that they're all superficial. And nowhere in the story, in the 4 versions of the story, does Christ not resurrect from the dead. All the 4 Gospels agree that Christ died on the cross, was buried for 3 days, and then resurrected from the dead. And so they all agree on that. That's like the main essential kirigma, the essential teaching of the gospel, right? That's the core. That does not change, and that's what's important. That's what fulfills all the messianic prophecies from the Old Testament. The little details, how many people were there, exactly what time, all that kind of stuff, that stuff changes because people remember things in different ways. And by the time they get around to writing them, which are years later, they have different approaches and different memories of it. If you think about a car accident that happens today, a police officer gets to the scene of a car accident and takes statements from multiple witnesses. The police are trained to expect that they're going to get small variations in the eyewitness accounts from the different witnesses, and that's to be expected because everybody has a different perception of an event. Sometimes you can have even like big differences, but what they try to do is they try to corroborate the main evidence of the main event of what happened, what agrees, and then the little things on the side are basically human error or human perception. This is normal for us, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact that the church maintained these 4 different versions of the story without doctoring it, without kind of like, smoothing over the differences or chopping them out or doctoring the text, they maintain the differences, even though sometimes they're difficult to explain, means the church was truthful. The church did not want to, pull a wool over the people's eyes, or, because if the church was this kind of evil organization that was trying to kind of like, manipulate everybody, what they would have done is they would have sat down, they would have, doctored the documentation, doctored the evidence, and made sure that every single eyewitness account agreed 100% with no differing points of view at all. That's what they would do to make it look more credible, right? But that's not what they did. They maintained the differences and the contradictions and all this kind of stuff as it was. They said, listen, these are the eyewitness accounts that we have. We are being truthful. We are being true to the tradition. We are being faithful to the tradition without changing anything. Here it is, right? Believe what you will believe, right? And that is actually the strongest evidence and the strongest argument for the authenticity of the gospel accounts and the resurrection accounts, right? That, yes, we have slight differences, but that's human, right? People remember things in different ways, but the main essential story does not change. So that's what I have to say about that. I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah. So I don't see any other questions. I don't know. I'm seeing if there's any more. There's one more question here. From my mother. She got one more question in, so I'll get this one in, and then maybe we'll wrap up for the night if there aren't any other questions, even though we did start late. It says here, we've been told on a daily basis by the media that our normal lifestyle will not come back at all until we have a mass vaccination worldwide. Okay, so this is a coronavirus question. And if it is true that this will be done via a quantum tattoo on our right hand or forehead, which will mark us on with an invisible identifier, how can we Orthodox Christians accept this? Isn't this going to be a rejection of one's holy chrismation and a rejection of God? Okay, so the short answer is, well, A, I don't know if this is going to be the case. I think so. There's every time there are these kinds of like, pandemics and kind of like calamities that happen, there's a ton of conspiracy theory websites out there, conspiracy news media coverage that's kind of pushing, oh, it's the end of the world, and the mark of the beast, and they're going to put a chip in our hands, and they're going to give us a kind of a tattoo thing, and this and that. And it's also true that you see that there is kind of like this chip that people are injecting into their hands, that where they can pay for everything, and like, oh, look, this is like, it's in scripture, and it's the mark of the beast and this kind of stuff. So I hear this quite a bit. I hear it from a lot of Orthodox Christians as well. This is not the first time that I've heard this. In every pandemic, in every generation, we hear this. It's the end of the world, and it's the end. The Antichrist is coming. Things like that. I would say that all these things should not scare us as Orthodox Christians for two reasons. Number one, this preoccupation with the apocalypse and the end times is not Orthodox. It's actually very prevalent amongst evangelical Protestants. There's a big preoccupation with the end times and the Antichrist and the coming of the end amongst evangelical Protestant circles, and that's heavily influenced Orthodox Christians in the Western world. So there's this kind of like, I would say there's an unhealthy preoccupation with the end times, and that it's unhealthy. Why? Because it's fed by fear. It's fed by, not by love, not by trusting God, not by peace and serenity, but and calmness that comes from trust in God, but it's fed by fear. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. What's going to happen? And people get anxiety and they start making bad decisions instead of being calm and showing people how to have trust in God and how to pray and how to be humble. So that's one thing. Number two is that, if we're worried about the government following us and tracking us and things like that, well, that ship has sailed. The government knows exactly where we are at any given time. These things that we carry around are tracking devices, and people say, well, I can turn this off and I can leave this at home and they can't track me. Well, yes, that's true. You can shut this off, but do we? We do not, because we are so addicted to these things that we will not leave them at home, and we feel like a part of ourselves is missing if we forget it at home or something, because it's so essential to our lives. So we don't. 99.9% of all of us will not shut it off and leave it at home. It's just not realistic. So they're already tracking us here. They can already track you with satellite. They already know where your laptop is and your phone and things like that. So, and there's chips in your cards and your bank cards and all that kind of stuff. So it's like there's even tracking technology even in checks and even in money, right? So if we're worried about people knowing where we're going, like that ship sailed a long time ago. I'm not saying that I want a chip in my body. I would not do that, nor would I be comfortable with doing that. But it's not much different than what we're already, like, people, they already know like exactly what's going on right now, and they can track us through the internet and all this kind of stuff. So things like that don't really bother me so much. I'm not so scared of those things. And in every pandemic, in every calamity that's happened in the past, we always see that people said the same things. When the Black Plague happened, people thought it was the end of the world, right? When Napoleon was taking over, most of Europe, they called him the Antichrist. When Hitler was killing and exterminating the Jews, they called him the Antichrist, and it was the end of the world. When there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, people thought it was the end of the world. People always think it's the end of the world. And the problem is that Christ himself in the Gospel of Matthew, especially the Gospel of Matthew, reiterates that we will not know, and we will never know when the end is coming. So we have to be prepared, but not be scared all the time. But we have to be prepared, but we will never know. It will come upon us like a thief in the night, right? And so if people think that they can somehow read the signs and all this kind of stuff, and they waste their time on these websites, kind of like reading all this fear mongering that's happening, I believe that it's what the devil wants from us. The devil wants us to be distracted by fear and by all these prophecies and all this kind of stuff, so that we're not paying attention to our own spirituality at the moment, which is the most important thing, right? And I think that's where we fall into the trap of, neglecting our spirituality in the favor of, consuming all this fear-based, propaganda. And that's why I don't read that kind of stuff, and I try to focus on the positive. That's my answer for that. Let's see, there's another question here. Yes, I am going to post this. Unfortunately, we got cut off twice, so there's like basically this is going to be a two-parter that I'm going to try to download, connect the videos together, and then re-upload it as the full, session, because we got cut off, unfortunately. So I'm going to try to edit it a bit and then put it back up. So give me a couple of days for that, but yeah, you can watch the whole thing again. So, and all the other ones, when they're not cut, then it's always posts right away on the Father Ted Talks YouTube channel. So you can always watch it. Okay. Another question. I watched part of your Holy Week services this year because of the live streams. I had a few questions. Where does the crucified Christ icon go after taking it off the cross? Ooh, great question. So at the EP06 service, which is the taking down of Christ from the cross, which happens on Holy Friday afternoon, 2 or 3 p.m., depending on when the church service does it. We do it 2 o'clock here. The icon that is up on the cross is taken down, and it's wrapped in a white sheet, in a white cloth, which is just like what Joseph, Arimathea, and Nicodemus did. When they took him down, they wrapped him in a linen shroud and placed him in the tomb. And what do is we take that icon of Christ that's wrapped up, and we place him in the back of the altar. Either he is laid back against the back of the actual altar table, or there's chairs in the back of the altar, like it's called the synthrono, where the bishops used to sit, and we place him there in the back. So he basically goes to the back of the altar, and he stays wrapped up, and he's put away until the Ascension. And after the Ascension, right, he gets put back on the cross again. The cross remains bare, either up on the solea here, like we have them here. If you can see, we have the cross there. It's up on the solea still with a wreath, but it will go back inside on Sunday, but it will stay bare with a wreath on it for 40 days. And then after that, Christ will go back on. So that's just practically what we do. And represents, we're in the resurrection period. So, yeah. All right, so it's about 7:15. I don't see any other questions right now, so I think we're going to call it a night, because I want to sort some of this tech problems that we had today. I don't know why. We got through all of Holy Week without a glitch, without anything, thank you, Sue. Yeah, you're happy that we're on YouTube. Yeah, we were never on Facebook, really. Only one time we had a glitch and we had to go to Facebook. I think it was Palm Sunday or Lazarus Saturday? I forget. We had a glitch and I had to go to Facebook Live as a backup. But all the other services were on YouTube, because I think YouTube, it's an open source. You don't have to have a membership like on Facebook. Not everybody has Facebook. So, everybody can watch on YouTube, right? And we can always link it to Facebook as well. So I always keep it on YouTube so everybody can just go to the link and watch it whenever they want. So, we're going to keep doing these. I think I'm having a lot of fun doing them. And I know Tina's having a lot of fun. We're going to have to work out some of the tech issues that we've been having here. But hopefully we'll fix that soon, and I'll make sure that we don't go offline again next time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look and maybe do another one next week. And, we'll try to maybe do a weekly thing or a bi-weekly thing. I think right now during the quarantine, have a little more time. We can definitely keep it as a weekly thing, just to keep in touch with everybody. And then we'll see what happens after the quarantine lifts. Maybe we'll go to a bi-weekly thing as far as, the Q&As. Okay. So, again, God bless you guys. I'm going to sign off now. It's almost, just past quarter after, almost 20 after 7. Christos Anesti, Christ is risen. Don't forget to say it to everybody that you know. And we will see you guys. Tomorrow is St. George. So we will be streaming here live for the liturgy. My son's name day, George, my eldest son. My little son's birthday, Angelo. He's born on St. George's. My father's name day. My father-in-law's name day. My chanter, George, his name day. So it's a big feast day. And hopefully you guys will be here tomorrow for the liturgy, and we'll talk soon. God bless you guys. Christos Anesti, Christ is risen.